What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. On today's episode, we'll be finally getting to the season review for Billy Donovan. This is something that a lot of you guys have been asking for. I actually put the poll up. This is the first time that I did that. I actually put the poll up for this review before I even did it because I wanted to know where you guys were sitting with that the grade on Billy Donovan's season and how he did coaching this season. So we'll get into all that and some more right after our intro.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
All right, beautiful people. So before we get into my thoughts on Billy Donovan's season coaching, I want to get into your guys' thoughts on Billy Donovan's coaching this season. So I put up the poll here. We got 1.2 thousand votes is the way to word that correctly. And so out of that, we got 5% of people voted for A, 56%, so the overwhelming majority voted a B, and 33% voted a C, 4% a D, and 1% an F. So that came in, honestly, a bit higher than I was expecting for Bulls fans. And again, one of the things that I think has happened is that with some time away from the end of the season in the player grades, in the grades for Coach Billy Donovan, is that it's really allowed people some time to reflect and not be as reactive as they were at the end of the season. By the end of the season, a lot of Bulls fans were completely saying, hey, Billy Donovan needs to get out of here. Billy Donovan is his coach. And there's still a lot of fans who are saying that. Let me be clear on that. There's a lot of Bulls Nation that is calling for Billy Donovan to not be the coach of the Chicago Bulls going forward. And I kind of understand that to a degree, and we'll get into my thoughts on that here in a second. But that number, the fact that the majority of it rated it a B, was actually surprising. I expected probably the majority to be a D. To be a C. I expected D's to be a little bit higher. I really did expect the spread between B, C, and D to kind of all be closer. But the fact that the most of the vote, 89% of the vote, was either a B or a C, I really didn't expect that. And that's fairness coming from Bulls Nation. And like I said, I like it when some space comes around, because I think had I put that poll up right when the playoff series ended for the Chicago Bulls and they were eliminated, I think it would have been quite a different result in the polls. But to get into my thoughts for Billy Donovan, so the Bulls record ended at 46-36 this season. They had a great start to the season in which they were rolling. The defense was better than expected, and that is a big part of Billy Donovan's schemes, but it also was having players like Lonzo that were used correctly. The fact that Billy Donovan did have Lonzo switch on players up to fours at times. The same thing with Alex Caruso. The fact of trusting Ayo Dosunmu and seeing something in Ayo and his defense that initially got him. Like, these are all things from the coach. The way in which he used DeMar DeRozan, that to make him the king of the fourth, trust DeMar in the fourth quarter. I know that looks like something that, hey, DeMar's cooking. You go with DeMar. But it's not that easy. DeMar's an older player. It could have been easy to kind of force it and say, hey, no, Zach, we're going Zach in the fourth quarter. But to allow for both Zach and Billy Donovan to really allow DeMar DeRozan and to trust him on the coaching staff side was huge. When you look at like some of the ways when our roster was fully healthy, getting out in transition, the fact that the Bulls were getting a bunch of turnovers on the defensive end at the beginning of the season to get to transition buckets and to push that pace. And one of the things that this team did lack, especially after Patrick Williams went down, was the rebounding factor, specifically offensive rebounding. And one of the things that Billy Donovan did do in his scheme was basically say, hey, Vooch, if you can't get the offensive rebound, hey, everybody else run down in the court, set up on defense. Those are the little things that Billy Donovan did as a coach that helped. But let's be clear here. Almost those same things worked against the Chicago Bulls at the latter half of the season. The lack of offensive rebounding. Now, we know that we had size issues. We know Billy Donovan. I know some people really lay the small ball all on Billy Donovan, but let's be clear here. Tony Bradley was not good. Tristan Thompson, as much as he did good talk, he wasn't that good for us either. So really, when you look at it, like, yes, there was a roster construction problem. But Billy Donovan did use in my mind, he used the best players that he could in certain situations. Like, would we have liked to see more Derrick Jones Jr. down the stretch? Yes. Why didn't he go to that? Is it health? We still never really found out. But the lack of size on this team was a roster construction issue. And looking at it, Billy Donovan did almost the best that he could with this. Yes, there are times where he didn't go to Vooch late in games when Vooch was cooking in the first half. That's terrible coaching. The lack of adjustments at certain points in the season were mind-boggling. There were certain times in this where Billy Donovan did not make it just like, do you remember the after we lost to the Spurs, my live stream where I said a simple pick and roll probably about 100 times because Billy Donovan got exposed by a simple pick and roll too many times this season. We're making slight adjustments. Yes, you didn't have some of the size that you needed. Well, you didn't have any of the size that you needed. We understood that. But not being able to make adjustments to a pick and roll, right? To a pick and roll to where it killed you down the stretch of some games. That is inexcusable. Billy Donovan's, and that's something that's happened over the course of Billy Donovan's career, is that if you have a coach that does some things unexpected on the other side of the ball, Billy Donovan has never really adjusted well to those things. I'm not in the mindset that Billy Donovan's a terrible coach. I'm not in that at all. I understand why they went with Billy Donovan. At the time, the Bulls, being where they were as a franchise, to be able to get a big name like Billy Donovan and a name that players in the NBA respect and know, and he is a player's coach, to be able to wipe that palate clean of Jim Boylan and bring in a coach that the players were probably going to love. I understand why the Bulls made all that. But as we look forward to actually being contenders, and yes, this roster needs to improve drastically, what is it and how far can Billy Donovan really take you is the question. And that's what we're going to get into. But first, I have to give my grade. Looking at Billy Donovan's season, looking at the first half, looking at the second half, looking at the simple things, even when the Bulls were winning. And remember, I was the one saying that to you guys that you guys didn't like hearing during the season. Like, even when the Bulls were winning, some of these things that were issues were rearing their ugly heads. And I said, once we start facing better competition, let's hope that we don't get exposed by that. And we got exposed every single time. Every time there was a strategist of a coach on the other side of the ball, on the other team, Billy Donovan got outcoached in a lot of those matchups. And because of that, like evaluating it in totality, I have to give Billy Donovan a C-. And that would be even lower if it wasn't for how good we looked at the first half of the season. The fact of, and some people in the comments got this wrong last time, like, yes, Coach Chris Fleming coached 4 or 5 games out of that 9-game winning streak. But let's not forget, we had several long winning streaks as well with Billy Donovan as the coach of this team. And he has to get credit for that. And it's hard to give a coach anything lower than a C- when he did at the first half of the season, had the Bulls the number 1 team in the East for so long. But at the end of the day, it's like with movies, and I say this with film all the time over on my film podcast. If you don't nail the landing, it can ruin everything you saw before that. And that's really what kind of happened with Billy Donovan's coaching this season. It's happened with this team this season. And that in there lies the issue with Billy Donovan. So my grade for Billy Donovan is a C-. And is that me being a bit harsh? Probably. I can admit that. That is absolutely probably me being a little bit too harsh. Should it probably be more like a B-, C+? I can see a world in which that happens. But the fact of how embarrassing it was, the fact that we got embarrassed at home, the getting embarrassed by a simple pick and roll, the lack of adjustments that we as fans in live streams were talking about that Billy Donovan didn't make, the fact that Coach Fleming, who, by the way, Coach Fleming, from what we've seen, we can't say he's a better coach than Billy Donovan, but he did make adjustments quicker when he was in the head coaching chair than what we saw from Billy Donovan, especially in the latter half of the season. So the question remains, and the title of this episode is, how far can Billy Donovan really take you? Can he get you to an NBA title? Yeah, we've seen it happen with the Oklahoma City Thunder. If this team improves the things that they need to improve on, I can absolutely see a world in which we go on a long playoff run with Billy Donovan. But can he get you over the hump? Now, I know some are calling for Billy Donovan to lose his job this summer. I've gone over a multitude of the reasons why that won't happen. The fact that the Bulls are still paying Jim Boylan, the fact that if they cut Billy Donovan, they'll have to pay him for the next 2 years. The fact that we know that this Bulls team likes to save money as much as they can. They're not going to pay 2 coaches to sit at home while they pay another coach to be on the bench actually coaching the team. That's not going to happen right now. But I will say, if we have another season that ends like this, we need to start having some serious conversations. Do I think Billy Donovan is the coach that can get the Bulls to win a title? That's the question that I have to ask here, and that's the question that I've bounced back and forth in my own head for months at this point. And ultimately, I come up with this. It's possible, right? It's possible that Billy Donovan, with the right assistant coaches, with the right roster, with the team getting hot at the right moments, it's absolutely possible But the Bulls, looking at this playoff run, not from the Bulls, but from everybody else who's currently still in the playoffs, the Bulls are a long way off from being true title contenders. So it may just be a timing issue. When it all comes down to it, it may be that this team is not competing for a title. Like they may be competing for a long playoff run. I hope that next season they go on a long playoff run. I hope that they can make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. I hope all that, and I can see a future in which that happens. I can, like I said before, I see if everything goes perfect, I see a situation in which the Bulls, with drastically improving certain things on this roster and improvements from Patrick Williams, Ayo Dosunmu, that they can make a title, maybe in the next, make a championship run, not actually win it. Could they make a finals? Anything's possible. But is Billy Donovan the guy to ultimately get you there is the question. Looking at how he lost in the finals with OKC, it raises some questions there, considering the talent that they had on this team. And we don't have a player like KD on this team. Hell, some people would say that we don't have a player like Russ on this team. So those questions remain. And as I said before, when we eventually do move on from Billy Donovan, because it's going to happen at some point, I don't want to see the Bulls go after a flashy name. I want to see the Bulls look and build the next great coach, right? I want to see them I always compare it to Eric Spoelstra. I want to see them build the next Eric Spoelstra, somebody who the mass basketball fans had never heard of, but he was working away in the Miami Heat organization. And they gave him that deal. Or hell, even like Ime Udoka, who looked great this season. First-time coach, looking great, getting his team to the Eastern Conference Finals, former player. I want to see them sign the next big name. I don't want to see them go after a big name. When that comes, now we may get ahead of that. So the question in this video that I asked, and I'm going to present to you guys, how far can Billy Donovan really take the Chicago Bulls? I think that the limit of that may be a finals, but can he get over the hump? We know that the finals have become a game of adjustments. And I can say this, at least in his Bulls tenure, I have not seen the key adjustments in tough games that would lead me to believe that maybe even in the Eastern Conference Finals, depending on the coach that's on the other side from him, that Billy Donovan can make those adjustments that are needed to get to that level. But let me know what you guys think down below. Let me know what your grade is for Billy Donovan. You guys already voted, but again, if you want to leave it in the comments here, if you agree, disagree with me, I want to hear all of it. Thank you for tuning in to Chicago Bulls Central. Go ahead and follow the podcast at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave us a text and or voicemail, the number to do that is 773-270-2799. Like I like to end everything on, go Bulls. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.